I'm going to actually have the jury come down.
Mr. Richards is lonely.
Yeah, my client's
Oh.
in the back room, they didn't want to.
Okay, we'll wait.
Exhibit.
I think they settled. Would you come down, please?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so the examination will be allowed as has been discussed. All right, how was the KFC? Very good, huh? Okay, and did you have enough? Okay, let's proceed.
Mr. Grosskreutz, I'm going to approach you for a second if I can. And I'm showing you what has been previously marked as Exhibit 69. You'd agree that's the statement that I had previously showed you that you had given the police on the 26th. Is that right?
Yes. So on this document, it's marked 2520. I don't know if that's reference to the time of the incident, but
Right.
this statement was given. It looks like 0900. I'm sorry, 9:46 a.m. of
Okay.
the following day.
So just so we're clear, it says on 8/25/20 at 11:30 p.m. this happened, right?
Correct.
Okay. So the only thing I want to make sure that you're comfortable saying is there's markings at various points on this paper. Is that right?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And the statement is 2 pages. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would.
Okay. And can you tell me what those marks are on the left-hand side of that document?
What is being referred to, there are circles. It looks like 2 on the first page, 2 on the second page. And these are on the left-hand indent. And in those circles are my initials.
Okay. So you had at various points during that statement put your initials on it?
Correct. I wasn't able to, I'm right-hand dominant, so I wasn't able to write. So the officer that, I'm not sure which officer that was, but the officer was taking my verbal statement, transcribing it, and then throughout, I would initial either, so you can see here, there's the word approximately was crossed off. I signed that there's a correction there made.
Okay, so can I ask you this?
Yeah.
Where it says, I told multiple officers that I had drop my firearm. Right next to that, you put your initials, is that right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And to be fair, on the bottom of each one of these pages, it says, I have made the above statement without any threats or promises. It is my desire to state the true facts as to this incident. I have read the above statement and find it true and correct. Is that what it says?
That is what it says, yes.
Okay, and you signed that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So my last, where we left off, I just have a couple questions for you. I had asked you if you had any regrets about that evening, and that you had said that you did not, correct?
Correct.
And I had asked you if you know a person, Jacob Marshall, correct?
Yes.
And Jacob Marshall may not be today, but he was your roommate.
Yes.
And you had said that he had visited you in the hospital.
Yes.
And I'm going to show you what is marked as Exhibit 70. I'm not interested in the stuff on the right now. I'm just interested in the photograph. Okay? Is that a photograph of you and Mr. Marshall?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Does that appear to be taken after you had suffered the injury to your arm?
Yes.
Okay. And that's at a hospital. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you had said you didn't have any regrets. Did you tell Mr. Marshall that your only regret was not killing the kid and hesitating to pull the gun before emptying the entire mag into him?
No, I never said that.
You didn't tell that to your roommate.
Objection, answer, Nancy.
You didn't tell that to Mr. Marshall?
No, I did not.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Judge, I would move 69 and 70.
Any objection?
We can do it after if you want.
Your Honor, can we talk about those two exhibits afterwards? I do have objection to both of them.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Grosskreutz, I just have a few follow-up questions here. At one point in the video that was played for you by the defense, you referred to the defendant as a boogaloo boy. What did you mean by that?
I don't recall if I was referring specifically to the defendant. I think a more accurate statement would be the group of armed individuals, predominantly white males with AR-15s, in, generally speaking, some sort of, we'll say, paramilitary attire. And what I mean by that is camel clothes, body armor, chest rigs, helmets, things of that nature.
Is it fair to say, Mr. Grosskreutz, that no matter what you tell us or remember, everything you did that night's on video or photographed, correct?
That is true.
I want to play a little bit of Exhibit 57. Can we go to the 31-minute mark, please? 31 minute. This was a portion of the exhibit that was played for you on cross-examination, and I just want to go back to that for a moment. Can we play from there, please?
Looks like the Boogaloo boys, the good old boys rolling up. Two right there. Two right there.
You fucking laughing? Fuck you!
Yo, we got our own medics. You're good. You can go home.
The voice that's heard there saying, "We got our own medics, you can go home." That's your voice, right?
Yes, it is.
Why did you say that?
It was my interpretation throughout the events of August 25th that these armed individuals, whether they were Boogaloo Boys, Proud Boys, etc., all had we'll say, a homogeneous appearance. Again, meaning the rifles, the body armor. And what I had inferred throughout the events of that night, that these groups of people weren't received very friendly towards other demonstrators. And in specifically to reference the defendant, it was also my interpretation that the defendant lacked the necessary experience, potentially the necessary knowledge to adequately fulfill his self-proclaimed role as a medic.
Can we now go to the 57-minute and 36-second mark in this video, please?
Stay on your property. That's why you got problems already with people.
Here's the hothead here.
I know you are, but like, they got their own medics.
We're asked a question about the defendant's reaction at that very moment in time when he was told by someone, "Don't go out in the street, stay on your property." And you were asked if the defendant reacted in any certain way. Do you know if he came and spoke with anyone about that comment at that moment in time?
No, I do not.
Okay. Now, can we go to the 1 hour, 17-minute, and 10-second mark in this exhibit, please?
It sounded like gunshots. It sounds like multiple gunshots. People are scattering. Now this is southbound on Sheridan. This is, I was just at 60th. Looks like they even set up a recliner. Oh, 110%, bro.
Yeah, dude.
100.
Do you hear what the crowd is saying at that point?
I do.
And what were they saying?
Sounds like they're yelling medic repeatedly.
Is that what caused you to start running?
Yes, it is.
Okay, go ahead.
Shots.
Why are you shooting? Hey!
Hey, what are you doing? You shot somebody? Who shot? Who shot?
Go back 10 seconds and play that again, please.
Hey, what are you doing? You shot somebody? Who shot? Who shot?
Is it fair to say, Mr. Grosskreutz, that what was just played on the screen is the only words exchanged between you and the defendant after the defendant killed Joseph Rosenbaum?
Yes.
And you've already explained what you heard at that time. We've already heard the video. Was there ever a time in which the defendant said someone pulled a gun on him?
In hindsight, no.
In your statement the next morning, you told the police you'd heard the words, something to the effect of, he pulled a gun on me, from the defendant. Is that right?
Correct.
With the benefit of hindsight, we can see that never happened, correct?
Correct.
At the time you gave the statement to the police the following morning, how long had you been awake?
A couple hours, no more.
After surgery.
After surgery, yes.
And before surgery, you'd been awake all day Tuesday, right?
Yes.
And in the time period between you were shot by the defendant and the time you spoke to the police officers, did you even have possession of your phone?
No, I did not.
Had you watched this Facebook live stream?
No, I had not.
Can we continue that video now, please?
Stop him!
Hey, stop him!
Shoot someone! Get his eyes!
Mr. Grosskreutz, we can still hear audio, but there's no video coming from your live stream. Do you know why that is at this particular moment in time?
I believe it's because I dropped my phone after being shot by the defendant.
To the best of your knowledge, did the audio that we just capture, or watch rather, did that capture everything that you said when you are, after you talked to the defendant and had that little exchange until you got shot?
Yes.
At any point in there, did you say anything about you're going to kill the defendant, you're going to shoot the defendant, make any threats to the defendant of any kind?
No.
Can we please pull up exhibit number 5? Let's put those down for a second. Let me just approach for a second. While we're getting ready for Exhibit 5, let me just ask, may I approach your Honor? Mr. Grosskreutz, the defense has shown you a photograph which has been marked as Exhibit number 65. I'm just going to hold that up for you. Does this show you with your hands raised before the defendant shoots you?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll just, I think this has been on the TV screen, but I'll just show the jury. Are you pointing your gun at the defendant here?
No, I'm not.
Is this right before he does the re-racking of the gun?
Yes, it is.
And then exhibit number 66, this is the photograph that shows you moving towards the defendant after he re-racks the gun. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it is.
Now, you were asked if you are pointing your gun at the defendant in this picture and also in exhibit number 67. Do you remember being asked those questions?
I do.
At any point during that encounter, did you intentionally point your firearm at the defendant?
No, I did not.
Can we play exhibit 5, please? At this point in the video, there are people that are running in the same direction as the defendant. Are you even on screen yet?
I don't see myself on screen, no.
All right, let's keep going. The person that attempts to kick the defendant has flown over the defendant. Mr. Huber is approaching the defendant. Are you even on screen yet?
No, I'm not.
All right, let's continue. Now, at this moment in time, you are on the screen, and it appears that you're sort of crouching, like crouching down as if what? What were you thinking at that moment? Why were you doing that?
First, yes, that is me on the screen crouching, and it was reactionary instinct, I guess is a good way to put it, and the best way that I could describe that is, one, the noise from the shot. I mean, it's a very large caliber firearm, and I think that in of itself probably startled me. But then my immediate next thought was I could be shot next.
If your intent was to shoot the defendant with your Glock pistol, would you have gotten that close to him?
If that was my intent, no.
If that was your intent, you wouldn't have done that.
Exactly. Right, correct.
Let's keep going for just a second, please. Would you mind, if you can, standing up and demonstrating to the jury how your body is positioned in this still?
So if
You got a handheld?
A microphone?
We got your microphone.
We'll give you the microphone, and if you could just step in front of the jury there, I'd like you to demonstrate this for us. Go ahead. All right. Might have to hold it really close.
So in this still, if the defendant is right here in front of me on the ground, this is my pistol that I had in my hand, my cell phone. My body is bladed towards the defendant. I have her cell phone in my left hand, microphone or pistol in my right. My body is bladed with my left hand, left arm, towards the defendant's firearm, with then my pistol in a similar angle I'm about to show you.
When you were after all this was said and done, was there any impact or anything like that on your left arm from that gunshot?
Yes, there was.
What was that?
It was determined to be a muzzle burn,
From its proximity to the defendant's gun?
so a little more context on that. When a bullet is fired, there are gases that are
Judge,
extremely...
I'm going to object.
That's fine. We'll move on. You can go ahead and have a seat. Thank you for doing that. At that moment in time, right before you got shot by the defendant, did you feel there was an imminent danger that the defendant was going to kill you?
Yes, absolutely.
When you were just demonstrating to us the way your right hand was holding the gun, however it was angled, my question for you is that the way you hold and point a gun when you're going to shoot it?
No.
I have no further questions.
So, Mr. Grosskreutz, you watched the video that Mr. Binger played when Mr. Rittenhouse was walking past you, and you had said something along the lines of, "No medics are needed here, we don't need you," right?
Yes.
And you were saying that, oh, here come some Boogaloo boys. You've never met Mr. Rittenhouse before, have you?
No, I have not.
You had no idea who he was, any affiliation with any group, nothing, right?
No.
You were just spouting off guessing. Guessing.
I was making an inference. Yes.
With no information.
Yes.
And Mr. Binger asked you if you ever threatened verbally with words Mr. Rittenhouse. Do you remember him asking you that?
I do.
And your answer was he did not.
Yes.
You'd agree, people don't have to use words to threaten other people. They can do it by their actions, correct?
Yes.
Like running after them down the street with a loaded firearm, right?
Yes.
Like approaching them, loading their foot and moving their gun forward while the person's on their butt sitting there, right? Those are nonverbal things that can be used to show aggression, correct?
Yes.
Now, you had been asked by Mr. Binger, and you had shown a demonstration of this blading maneuver, as you call it, and I'll take your word on that. Can you bring up 67? So, now, you can talk about what your mental intention was. You'd agree what everybody's looking at is you pointing a gun at a person's head, right?
As well as the defendant pointing his firearm at me.
Absolutely. But you are, by your own admission, pointing a pistol from less than 3 feet away at his head. Agreed?
No, I don't agree with that.
You don't agree that that gun is pointed in the direction of Mr. Rittenhouse's head? You don't agree with that?
In the direction, yes, but directly, no.
You didn't tell him what you were doing, right?
I don't have time to.
Well, as you're running, you didn't say anything, right? You're just chasing him down. You never say anything.
It would have been hard to communicate that over gunfire.
My question to you is, you never said a word to him other than approach him with your gun out from 3 feet away, right?
Yes.
I have nothing else.
you asked the defendant if he'd shot anyone, he lied to you, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And even though you've been asked questions about what he said at various times or things like that, did he make threats to anything like that, to people, anything like that? You construed his actions as threatening, didn't you?
Based off of witnessing the first 2 shots with Jump Kick Man, the third shot that killed Anthony Huber, yes.
Thank you.
I have one question. He didn't lie to you, right? When you had contact with him, he didn't lie to you, did he?
Yes, he did.
How did he lie to you?
After having asked him who was shot, and then him saying, I'm going to the police, which we know after the fact, and then saying, I didn't do anything.
So it's your testimony today that you heard. Now, to be fair, your first interview that you signed, you said that he told you, I'm working with the police, right?
I'm going to object. This is beyond the scope of redirect.
Right?
That is what I thought I heard in the moment, yes.
Okay, so you weren't telling the correct statement, correct?
Can you,
Yeah. You said that Mr. Rittenhouse lied to you.
yes.
Your initial statement to the police was, he told me I'm working with the police. You know that's not true.
After the fact, yes.
Okay. So what is on tape is he said, I'm going to the police, right?
Yes.
You're not saying that's not true.
No, I'm not.
Nothing else.
You may step down, sir.
See, we'll call Heather Williams to the stand.
Stand, please. Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony about to give in this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated.
Could you please state your name and spell it for the benefit of the court reporter?
First name is Heather, Heather. Last name is Williams, Williams.
And where are you employed?
The Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory, located in Milwaukee.
And what is your current position at the crime laboratory in Milwaukee?
I am a firearms and tool mark examiner.
And how long have you been employed with the Wisconsin State Crime Lab as a firearms tool mark examiner?
A little over 5.5 years.
And what does that mean to be a firearms or tool mark examiner?
As a firearms and tool mark examiner, I conduct examinations of firearms and firearms-related evidence, such as fired cartridge cases and fired bullets.
And is there any specialized education or training that you have done pertaining to your job as a firearms or tool mark examiner?
Yes, I first hold a Bachelor's of Science degree in law enforcement and justice administration with a minor in forensic science that included a 525-hour internship at the DuPage County Forensic Science Center. I also completed the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory Firearms and Toolmark Examiner Training Program. It's an apprentice-type training program, much like an electrician or a plumber, where you get both hands-on and classroom-like instruction.
And what exactly is firearms identification?
Firearms identification is the comparison analysis of fired evidence, compares bullets to barrels and cartridge cases to firearms.
And what process is used when examining a firearm that is submitted to your section?
One of the first tasks that we perform when a firearm is submitted to the firearms section is called a function test. The purpose of the function test is to first make sure that the firearm is a functional firearm and that it is also safe to test fire. During that function test, I'll check the condition of the firearm along with all safeties that are associated with that firearm.
And then what do you do next when examining that firearm?
Once I've determined that that firearm is safe to test fire, I will test fire the firearm. This is done to make sure that the firearm is working properly and the way that the manufacturer intended for it to work, and also instances in which we have fired evidence. Those test-fired bullets and cartridge cases that are produced are then compared to that fired evidence to see if they were or were not fired in the submitted firearm.
And did you become involved in a case in your professional capacity regarding Kyle-Rittenhouse, Joseph Rosenbaum, and Anthony Huber?
Yes, I was.
And how did you become involved with that case?
I was assigned to work that laboratory case.
I'd like to show you what has been previously marked and admitted as State's Exhibit 28. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do. I recognize that as the firearm that I analyzed for this specific case. How I recognize that is on the firearm in silver marker, I have indicated that laboratory case number associated with the case, the item designation of that item, my initials, and the date that that was examined.
So is it my understanding that you would have actually examined this exact firearm and fired it?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I think that's good. Thank you. So what do you use to test fire it with?
We're going to use ammunition that is part of our reference collection. When we choose the ammunition for our test fires, we try to choose it as close to the fired evidence that's submitted to that case.
What is a cartridge?
A cartridge is unfired ammunition that's going to consist of 4 components. You'll have the actual cartridge case, you'll have the primer, you'll have the propellant or gunpowder, and then you have the projectile or bullet.
So what is a cartridge case?
A cartridge case is a portion of a fired cartridge that is left over after it's been fired in a firearm. You may have commonly heard it referred to as brass.
And how do you determine if cartridge cases were fired in the same firearm?
You're going to look at markings that are transferred onto the fired cartridge cases during the firing process. Those are the markings that we look at to determine if they were or were not fired in the same firearm. And then instances when we have a firearm, we're able to determine if they were or were not fired in a specific firearm.
So what's the difference between a cartridge and a bullet?
A cartridge, like I said, is going to be the full unfired ammunition. So it's going to be those 4 components. A bullet is just one of those 4 components. So it's the projectile portion that you'll see on an unfired cartridge.
So what is a fired bullet?
A fired bullet is going to be the bullet that is expelled through the barrel of a firearm. It's going to have impressions that are going to be left on that from the rifling or that spiral pattern that's going to be within that bore of the barrel.
So how can you determine if bullets were fired in the same firearm?
You're going to look at those rifling impressions that are left on a fired bullet from the barrel that it's been fired through.
Is your crime lab accredited?
Yes, we are.
And who accredits your crime lab?
We are accredited through ANAB, ANAB. It stands for the American National Association Standards National Accreditation Board.
And are there any quality controls or procedures that are used, particularly in your discipline at your crime lab?
Yes, in the firearms section, we have a 3-step quality control procedure. The first step is called the verification process. This is when any type of identification, elimination, or inconclusive results of fired evidence is then looked at by a second qualified examiner in the section. Once that verification process has been completed, there is then a peer review process in which all notes and reports are looked at to make sure everything's clear, complete, and accurate. That last step is going to be administrative review. That is going to be when a supervisor will once again go through all reports and notes to make sure everything is clear, complete, and accurate before the report is submitted to the submitting agency.
I'll let you know, as marked as State's Exhibit 72. Do you recognize that?
I do. This is the report that I issued for this specific case. I know that based upon the laboratory case number, as well as it has my name as well as my signature, and then it also has information on the second page with my initials showing that I did complete both of these pages of the report.
Is that a true and accurate copy of the report that you issued in this case?
Yes, it is.
I'd like to move Exhibit 72 into evidence.
I don't have an objection.
I'll let you know, as marked as State's Exhibit 71. Can you please explain what this is?
This is one of the fired cartridge cases that I analyzed for this specific case. I can tell that based upon the laboratory sticker, the yellow sticker here. This has the laboratory case number associated with this case, the item designation, as well as my initials and date that I took this into my custody. I also have that information on the additional packaging for this specific item, and then we also have that information on the actual cartridge case itself.
So which was the bullet that was fired allegedly by the defendant? Where would that be in that packet?
This is just going to contain one of the fired cartridge cases. So this is a portion of a cartridge that was fired. So this is the portion that is ejected from the firearm.
So that, the thing in the top of that threefold, that is what was presented to you as an already fired cartridge. That's not one that you fired.
Correct, yes. This is a piece of submitted evidence for this specific case.
So what kind of, is that a true and accurate copy of how you would have packaged up that particular cartridge casing and all the other elements in Exhibit 71?
Yes, I know that this is how I packaged this piece of evidence because at each one of the heat-sealed seals, it's going to have my initials as well as the date that I actually sealed this piece of evidence.
I'd like to move Exhibit 71 into evidence.
Objection? Steve?
So after you test fire the weapon, the gun that we saw, then what happens next in your analysis?
So what I will do then is I will compare those test-fired cartridge cases to the fired evidence cartridge cases for this specific case. I do that by using what is called a comparison microscope. These are two microscopes that are then connected by an optical bridge. It allows myself as an examiner to look at two objects simultaneously side by side. That way I'm able to see the markings that are transferred from the firearm during that firing process on the cartridge cases to look to see if the submitted evidence was or was not fired in the submitted firearm.
So what did you do in this particular case?
In this particular case, there were 8 fired cartridge cases that were submitted. Each one of those 8 fired cartridge cases were then compared to the test fire cartridge cases that I produced so that I could be able to determine if they were or were not fired in the submitted firearm.
So you were submitted 8 of the, if you hold up Exhibit 71 briefly, you were given 8 of those cartridges on top?
Yes, it's 8 fired cartridge cases, just like this one here, was submitted for this specific case and analyzed.
And did you find that all 8 of those cartridges were fired through the weapon that Detective Antaramian showed you.
Yes, I was able to determine that the 8 fired cartridge cases submitted in this case was fired in the submitted firearm.
And that was by comparing each one to the test-fired projectiles that you fired?
Correct, yes.
I have nothing further, thank you.
Well, thank you. You may step down, ma'am.
Stand and call Officer Jason Krieger to the stand.
Testimony about to give in this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You may be seated.
Pass that over to
Sir, can you please state and spell your first and last name for the record?
Jason Krieger. It's JASONKRUEGER.
And how are you employed?
With the City of Kenosha Police Department.
How long have you been on the City of Kenosha Police Department?
Approximately 2 years and 11 months.
And were you working on August 25th, 2020?
I was.
And were you working with an officer, Pep Moretti, at that date?
Yes.
Had you been working in the previous days during the civil unrest that was occurring in Kenosha?
Yes.
And on August 25th, what was your assignment, your general assignment with your partner, Officer Moretti?
So on that date and time, we were assigned to second shift patrol. We were patrolling the downtown area as well as handling calls that popped up throughout the city, anything in progress.
So is it fair to say you were focused downtown, but if there was a reason to go to another part of the city for a domestic violence or a burglary, you would still respond to that call?
Yes.
Is that different than how let's say the night before was in your duties?
I believe that throughout most of the time, that was kind of the same. We were heading to in-progress calls, focusing on the downtown area to handle any incidents that arise.
Now, on the night of August 25th, at any point were you ever asked to respond to a potential shooting?
I do recall going to a shooting. We were just right in the area. I'm not 100% sure if we were dispatched to that call or not.
So, but at some point you and Officer Moretti went in the direction of some shots?
Yes.
And do you recall how you went about going to that location?
Yes, so we were in the area of 60th Street and between the 12 and 1300 block on a other call. I believe it was a fire. I heard the gunshots coming just southeast of us. I looked at Officer Moretti, and we decided at that point we were going to head to that since it seemed in progress.
Now, in your training, what are you trained to do if there is, let's say, a potential active shooter situation?
Our number one focus is to stop the killing or to make the scene secure, eliminate any active threats.
So with that in mind, what, if anything, did you do?
When we approached the scene, we had approached slowly just to try to attempt to gain any visual information that we could see. We had just been with a few other squads, other armored vehicles in the area, so we were assuming they were behind us. And we approached the scene very slowly to determine if we could at least get a visual on the any threats that we could see. We were hearing gunshots. We just couldn't see where they were coming from at that point.
Did anyone approach your vehicle?
Yes.
Who approached your vehicle?
There was a younger male. He was dressed in a T-shirt and I believe cargo shorts, and he was carrying an AR-15 style assault rifle, and he had his hands raised, and I believe he was carrying a medic bag as well.
Did you hear anything that the crowd was shouting in relation to this individual?
I did not hear any specific phrases. There was just a lot of noise, a lot of background noise, and in my mind, I was more focused on hearing the gunshots and trying to figure out where they were coming from. I didn't necessarily hear any specific words the crowd was shouting toward me.
Do you, at one point, I'm going to represent you, there's a video that shows you getting out of the squad car and running to the trunk. Do you have any idea why you did that?
A lot of my equipment I use on duty is stored in the trunk. Gas masks, vests, things like that. If I would have retrieved something from the trunk, it would have been to keep me safe on the scene if there was an active shooter. I do not recall the exact item.
By vest, do you mean like a bulletproof vest?
Yes.
Were you already wearing a bulletproof vest?
I do not recall what vest I was wearing, but I had my steel plate carrier with me. The vest I'm currently wearing right now is not able to prevent a rifle round going through, but the steel plate carrier that I had at that time would have been able to stop anything up to a round coming from a rifle.
So the vest you're wearing now, is that sort of the standard everyday vest that you would wear?
Yes.
And a bullet fired from an AR-15 like the one the defendant had, your vest would not stop it at all?
It's not rated for it. I've never attempted to do it, but I do not believe it would.
And how about your squad car? Is your squad car armored in any way that would prevent rifle rounds from penetrating it?
To my knowledge, no.
So what do you do as this person is approaching you on the street?
As I watched him approach, I was giving him verbal commands to keep away from my squad. I did not want anybody coming up directly to my squad that could be a potential threat. So we were giving him verbal commands just to stay back. I had also grabbed my pepper spray out of my vest and was going to use it if the individual continued to approach the car.
Why did you see him as a threat?
I never met him before. He had a rifle. Just given the situation at hand, there was a lot of circumstances where I just did not want some individual coming up to my squad car in that scene with those gunshots still going off that I didn't necessarily know.
I think you said his hands were up, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Did you feel like he was surrendering to you?
No.
Why not?
Throughout the past few days, we've come across a lot of individuals who are armed, and the first thing they do is put their hands up to signal that they don't mean any threat to us. It doesn't mean that they were surrendering, it just means that they just wanted us to see their hands. Hands are the most, they typically indicate if a threat is going to be present. So if we can see their hands, we generally know there's no threat there.
So you indicated that you grabbed your OC spray or pepper spray. What happened next?
The individual approaching our car was not responding to my verbal commands. So I shook the OC can, made sure it was able to discharge the spray, and I pointed it at the individual, and I discharged a stream of OC spray towards his direction when he would not listen to my commands.
At that point, how close was he to and you were in the passenger side?
Yes.
At that point, how close was he to your passenger side door?
I believe he was within about 5 feet.
Do you know if the spray hit him or not?
I do not recall.
Did the spray have the desired effect of him getting away from the vehicle?
Yes, he ended up walking away from me.
So once he left the area of your vehicle, what happened next?
I began to see other squad cars and armored vehicles coming to the area. I believe I took up a position on the east side of the road towards the parking lot and just kind of held it there to attempt to gain eyes as more officers came on scene. Throughout that time, I just tried securing the scene as best as possible, trying to gather as much information as possible about where the shots were coming from, who was firing them, and who the suspect was.
What, if anything, happened next?
We were approached by one of the mutual aid tactical teams who informed us that they had an individual with a gunshot wound to the arm. I believe that individual was Mr. Groskwitz, and they did not know how to access the hospital. Since I was familiar with the area, Officer Moretti and I got into our squad car, and we escorted that tactical vehicle to the east side of the Freighter South Hospital and got Mr. Groskwitz into the ER.
Now, the tactical vehicle you mentioned, is that what some people commonly refer to as like a Bearcat or an MRAP or something like that?
Yes.
So then you accompanied that to the hospital, and it contained Mr. Grosskreutz, who had been injured.
Yes.
Now, at the hospital, what happened? What did you observe?
So we got him into the hospital. I believe he went back to the ER. I stayed in the lobby. I was approached by another individual, Richard McGinnis, who kind of talked to me about that. He gave me information that he believed that he had the suspect on video just prior to the shooting. So I talked to him briefly, obtained the cell phone, and obtained the individual's ID card.
And then did you have him get interviewed by someone at in your department?
Yes, I passed all that information along to the Detective Bureau. I believe it was Sergeant DeWitt.
Now, at the hospital, when you were there with Officer Moretti, did you have any interaction with Joseph Rosenbaum, who at that point had deceased?
I believe that I helped Officer Moretti process and collect the evidence from one of the deceased. I do not recall which victim it was.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, officer.
Good afternoon.
So I don't have a whole lot of questions for you, but so if I could, and we've heard Officer Moretti testify. Okay, so do you hear what you believe to be rifle rounds around 11:50 or so on the 25th?
I heard gunshot rounds. I could not tell if they were handgun or rifle rounds.
Okay, so the type of firearm that had been discharged at that point, it was difficult for you to make out.
Yes.
But you knew that there'd been a discharge of firearms. You heard that much.
Yes.
So, do you recall seeing a person that you now know to be Mr. Rittenhouse walking toward your squad car?
Yes.
Okay, and to be fair, he has his hands like this, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I understand that you said that, tell me if I'm right, throughout that evening, people maybe who had firearms, when they saw you, they put their hands up, so you knew that they weren't a threat to you.
Yes.
This is also, to be fair, a way that someone could surrender.
Yes, it could.
Okay. And again, don't take this as being critical. I'm not trying to be that way. But as he's walking toward you, he doesn't have at that point his hands on his gun, but he's just walking toward your vehicle, right?
Yes.
And I understand your concern, but as he's getting closer to you, after knowing that a shot or shots had just been fired, I know there's a lot going on, but were you interested in finding out if he had any information?
I was.
Okay. And when he starts coming to the side, he's coming to your side, right?
Yes.
Do you hear him, like, say anything to you?
The only thing I can remember him saying was something about a shooting. There was no other verbal indication from him coming directly saying it was me. It was just something about a shooting.
Okay, and you had just heard shots fired.
Yes.
This person's walking to you with his hands up and says something about a shooting, right?
I mean, his exact words were not something about a shooting,
No.
but
Fair enough. He says something, included in that something is the word shooting.
yes.
And so I understand that we've seen the video, you pull out your OC spray, and after giving him a command, you spray him with the spray, right?
Yes.
Do you see Mr. McGinnis? You had mentioned that you see Mr. McGinnis at the hospital. He shows you the video?
Yes.
Do you say to yourself, that's the guy that's walking with his hands up that I just saw?
I did recognize the individual from the video, and into my mind, I believed he looked familiar.
Okay, and again, so do you tell anybody at that point, like, look, I'm putting these together, the guy that has his hands up, that's the guy we're probably looking for?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I do have two other questions. As he's walking up to you, do you ever ask him, and I understand it's a chaotic situation, do you ever ask him for identification?
No.
Do you ever ask him or do anything with the fact that he's possessing an AR-15?
No.
Now I have no other questions. Thank you, sir.
Were there other people, not necessarily in front of your vehicle, but around the area, in addition to Mr. Rittenhouse?
I do not recall.
Were other people trying to give you information regarding a shooting or a potential shooter or anything like that?
There was a lot of voices shouting. Nobody directly came up to my squad car window like Mr. Rittenhouse did, but there was people after he had left the side of my squad car as I got out of the squad who did give me information about potential suspects as well.
Now, when you and Officer Moretti are trying to get down to the scene of the active shooter, what is your primary goal?
Stop the killing, stop any threat.
Is that consistent with getting identification and speaking to an individual approaching your vehicle?
No.
Thank you.
Direct. Across, I guess. You may step down.
The state calls Kristen Harris to the stand.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may be seated.
Good afternoon, sir.
How you doing?
Could you state your name and spell your first and last name for the record?
Yeah, my name's Kristan Harris, Kristan, last name Harris, Harris.
How are you currently employed?
Basically, I've been furloughed, but I've been pursuing my passions, obviously doing the Rundown Live, which is a reporter, and I do talk radio.
Can you tell us what the Rundown Live is?
It's an independent news and media. We try to bring all viewpoints, have civil conversations, sometimes about difficult content, as well as we cover protests of all varieties, of all political viewpoints as well.
Is there a large group of people that produce the Rundown Live, or are you kind of the main person?
There's several people that are involved there. It's a group of citizen journalists. We quite often post stuff from other independent news sites. We try to report news before the mainstream media does, so we can give a very raw version.
What is your educational background?
I finished high school, but education really didn't become important to me till my later years. So, most of my research I've done through my own reading of books and information.
Do you have any formal journalistic training?
That I do not.
And do you operate out of the Milwaukee area?
That is correct.
How long have you been involved with the Rundown Live?
I've been doing reporting for about 12 years.
When you say reporting, is that all the Rundown Live or other stuff?
I also contributed to one of the top police accountability websites as a writer, known as Cop Block, which has been around for a long time.
What is that called?
Cop Block.
Cop Block?
Yes, .org was the website.
And when you say you contribute to them, does that mean you're like a reporter for them?
I used to write for them, though it's a defunct organization that was banned amongst a lot of other websites.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did you first get involved in the Rundown Live?
It's probably around 2011.
Did you form it, or did someone else?
Someone else formed it.
And then you joined it?
Yes, that is correct. And that person is no longer involved.
Do you have any sort of title with that organization?
I believe I'm the editor.
And you said you've covered a lot of protests. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Since about 2013, I probably covered over 100, 150 protests. I don't know the exact number.
What types of protests would they be?
Everything from something basic as Second Amendment rights and healthcare workers, against mandates, to BLM, Minneapolis, the burning down of the 3rd Precinct, DC, obviously January 6th, as well as Kenosha and probably countless BLM protests.
There were some things there that I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You said the burning of the 3rd
Burning down
district?
of the 3rd Precinct of Minneapolis, yes.
Okay.
That was the date. I don't know the date. That's how I recognize it.
That was one of the things that happened after George Floyd was killed?
That is correct.
And sorry, Karen, do we need to slow down?
Sure.
Whatever she says, so we got to make sure. You also mentioned January 6th. Is that with regard to what happened at the United States Capitol on January 6th of this year?
That is correct.
Were you there for that?
I was.
Okay. And were you covering that for the Rundown Live?
That is correct.
You mentioned Kenosha. Were you here in Kenosha for the events that followed the shooting of Jacob Blake?
I was on scene within an hour or two of the shooting of Jacob Blake.
Were you then, help the jury to understand, when you talk about the Rundown Live, we're familiar with a lot of different types of media, newspapers, magazines, the internet, things like that. Can you help us understand exactly what you mean when you say you cover these things?
Yeah, I'm a citizen journalist, so I generally go to these events and I stream a lot of the times. I interview people to try to get natural conversations and have civil conversations so people can understand, in my viewpoint, what people really are saying before there might be some propaganda added. So essentially, it's the most raw form of journalism.
So when you came down within an hour or thereabouts after Jacob Blake, were you interviewing and speaking to people?
Yes.
Do you record that in any way?
Yes, I do. Well, I stream it. It's recorded on the cloud.
Okay. So is it fair to say that when you are covering any sort of event for the Rundown Live, you have a camera that is taking video of the things you see?
That is correct. I usually use my cell phone, which is a high-end device.
And then that video is live streamed to the internet on whatever site you use so that people can watch it pretty much live. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
Okay. So, for example, on the night Jacob Blake was shot on that Sunday night, August 23rd, you were here using your equipment to live stream the things that you were seeing.
That is correct.
Did you continue to do that on Monday night?
Yes.
And again on Tuesday night?
Yes.
So I want to skip right to the night of Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. Were you here in Kenosha that night?
I was.
Were you live streaming for the Rundown Live?
As well as collecting B-roll, correct.
I'm sorry?
B-roll is footage that you take because you can't stream live because your internet connection is, so it's actually recorded straight to the device.
Okay. Do you recall approximately what time you would have arrived in Kenosha that particular day or night?
Yeah, around 8 o'clock, 8:15.
Where did you go once you came to town?
I headed down to the courthouse because that's where things were happening.
And then did you start your live streaming at that point?
I attempted to, but courthouse internet isn't the greatest, so.
We've all learned that lesson. So what did you do then?
I recorded video straight to my cellular device because this way at least I had documentation I could publish later.
Did there come a time in which your internet connection improved?
Yes.
How did you manage to make that happen?
It started to improve when I first started to head towards 59th and Sheridan.
Okay. Do you know what changed that made that better?
Yes. I ran into an interaction between Ryan Balch, I believe, and Gage Grosskreuz and other people that by the courthouse, and I asked if there was more armed individuals because the night before there was a video that went viral of people protecting property, and I felt it would make a different story than getting the same story I had the last 2 days.
And I do want to talk about what you just mentioned, but I think I didn't ask my question very well. You talked about being here and having poor internet by the courthouse, but then it got better when you went down to a different
That is
location.
correct, so I could stream live.
What was it that made the internet better or stronger down there than here? Do you know?
I don't know if it was just I had poor cell phone service or it was just better location. That's the only thing I can think of is that that location on my way there, it improved. I attempted to go live again and I was able to.
So is it fair to say that once you were able to go live, you continued to broadcast live throughout most of the rest of the evening?
That is correct till my battery ran out.
Okay. And did there come a time in which you went to that 59th Street car source location?
Yes.
Okay. And you've been here in the courtroom throughout parts of this trial, is that fair to say?
That is correct.
And you have seen other witnesses testify, such as Mr. Balch and Mr. Lukowski?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And when you were out live streaming that night, you went to that car source location and interacted with those individuals on some level. Is that fair to say?
That is fair.
Okay. I want to focus in on a period of time in that evening when there was a dumpster that was pulled out in the road out in front of the 59th Street car source. I'm going to ask two separate questions. First of all, do you independently remember that happening? Did you also get some video of that?
I did. It was streamed live.
Okay. And then from there, did you continue to remain physically at the 59th Street car source location for several minutes after that?
I did.
And were you in close proximity to either Ryan Balch or the defendant, or both of them, during those several minutes afterwards?
Probably within 20 feet.
Okay. Could we begin, I'm going to, our TVs are on, if not, I'll turn them on. Could we watch a little bit of your live stream, which has been marked as exhibit number 18, and we're going to go to the 1 hour, 22 minute, and 14-second mark. just ask Mr. Harris, do you recognize what is up on that screen?
I do.
Can you tell us what that is?
It looks like a dumpster that is in the middle of the street.
And is this a portion of your rundown live stream from the night of August 25th, 2020?
It is.
And would you agree with me that we are looking, well, did you personally recorded this, correct?
Correct.
And this is taken from the 59th Street car source lot looking into Sheridan Road facing east. Would you agree with that?
At this frame, yes.
Okay. Can we please play the video?
And militia are up there.
Yeah, we got a fire.
Where? Oh, dumpster fire?
Yeah, just a dumpster fire. Hey, it's just like the year, man.
Yeah, right? If 2020 was a blunt, it would be just a fucking stem.
It would just be stem and seed, man.
Right? I could use a doobie right now.
Continue the video for just 1 second, please. Mr. Harris, there are two people in this video that I'm going to point out to you. There is a gentleman here that is a little bit of a taller gentleman with a beard and some sort of cap on, and there's a woman next to him that appears to have sort of reddish hair. Do you see those two people?
I do.
I'm going to ask two questions. First of all, that night, did you have any idea who those people were?
I did not.
As you sit here today, do you know who those people are?
I believe one of them was the person who shot the fire behind, or the gunshot behind Rosenbaum, and I don't know who the other one is because their back is turned to me.
Okay. No dispute, that's Joshua and Kelly Zeminski? No dispute. Okay. So I'll represent to you, sir, that the taller gentleman is Joshua Zeminski, and the woman next to him is Kelly Zeminski. Okay. Please continue.
All right, let's.
Morning. How's it going? You guys want to fuck around and find out?
Hey.
You want to
Reel in.
That's what's up.
Reel in. Don't cause problems when there's none here. Yeah, that's true. Just stay on your property. Otherwise you're gonna cause. There's way too many of them. Bro.
There is an individual who is standing on the edge of that frame on the right-hand side there. Do you recognize that person as Gage Grosskreutz?
I do.
Okay. Please continue.
I have to agree with her.
Protect your property, not the streets. Protect your property, not the streets. Protect your property, not the streets. That's what the fuck up.
I have to agree with her. Yeah, they shouldn't be on the street.
Hey.
They're just protecting their property. One of the guys is an asshole.
I know. I thought they were yelling at them. I was like, why?
Oh, no,
These guys
well,
were.
We did because they lit it on
One
fire.
of the guys losing his patience. He should go inside.
Yeah, that's what we're about to send him.
Yeah, if you guys could switch him out. Just somebody's a loose cannon. He's got a lot of rage. He says the wrong thing. This whole crowd burns you guys alive.
Can you go back 10 seconds, please?
Yeah, if you guys could switch him out. Just somebody's a loose cannon. He's got a lot of.
Pause. There we go. Again, I want the jury to see that in the middle of the screen there is a taller gentleman with his hands in his pockets. That is Joshua Zeminski. And on the TV screen to the left of him with jeans on, that is Kelly Zeminski. All right, please go ahead.
Rage. He says the wrong thing. This whole crowd burns you guys alive. Protect your property. They're respecting that. Just keep it there.
We're not the enemy. Fuck the police. Let's go.
He's just trying to protect his property. He doesn't want anything. He has no problem with you guys. He just doesn't want anyone to burn down his shit. I can't blame him.
I understand. Hey, your job isn't to be in the street. You gotta stay on your property. That's why you got problems already with people. No one bothering your property. Don't look for trouble where there ain't none. A medic? I know you are, but like, they got their own medics. You know, if somebody's close by, take care of them. I know you're just trying to make peace. I get.
As this video is playing, we hear your voice speaking to someone in the background. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
Who are you speaking to?
I believe that was an interaction with Kyle-Rittenhouse.
Do you recall anything about what he was saying to you at that point?
That he was a medic, and that was it, pretty much that I got from that.
You said at one point they have their own medics. Did you hear that?
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
I cover a lot of protests, so I become familiar with a lot of the BLM organizations over the summer, especially during the George Floyd marches. So I felt a little bit more comfortable, per se, because I have had more interactions. That's all basically I was.
Sure, but you indicated they have their own medics. What does that mean?
Basically, the medics are, from my understanding, are individuals who volunteer to help out and take care of individuals that were injured, and I've seen them on multiple occasions, 8 individuals that were injured in protests.
Continue.
That, but they don't look at it that way. They look at you guys as it's a different. It's as much as you guys were afraid of them before they marched down here. I know, but like what the conversations you're having.
So you made a comment there about how they don't look at you that way or something along those lines. What did you mean by that?
A lot of the protesters identified the armed citizens as counter-protesters. They didn't identify them as just protecting their property.
Would it be fair to say that it was your impression that...
That was my impression, correct.
Sure. Would it be fair to say that it was your impression that the people in the crowd viewed the people around Mr. Rittenhouse as a threat?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that there may have been some individuals that had it, but not in the majority. I can't speak for everyone. I don't know what they were thinking.
Okay, let's continue, please.
Thanks, guys.
Back away from the business. Back away from the business. That's my police. Leave the business.
It appears that Mr. Balch and Mr. Lukowski are running towards you yelling gas, gas, gas. Would you agree with me on that?
That is correct.
What was going on?
The Bearcats were rolling down the road and they began to tear gas and trying to push the crowd past, I believe that's towards 60th, South 60th.
Okay. Have you recently watched this portion of your video?
I have.
And would you agree with me that for a few minutes after this, you are in close proximity with either Ryan Balch, Kyle Rittenhouse, or both of them at the same time?
I don't know for exactly how long, but yes.
Okay. I'm going to have the video played further, but I'm going to have the sound turned off.
Okay.
And then I'll let my colleague know when to stop the video, okay? Now, while we're playing the video, Mr. Harris, are you able to tell the jury where this scene is?
Yes, it's the back corner of the car lot of Car Source. There was people, or I don't know who it was, but they were throwing rocks up from behind the building.
And where you're at right now in this video are either Mr. Balch or Mr. Rittenhouse near you?
They were probably within 15 feet.
Are there any of the protesters or people on the street or anything like that anywhere near you at this point?
Negative.
Why is that?
They all moved towards what I call the gas station, 60th and Sheridan. Yeah.
Is that in part because the police have just gassed the entire street?
That would probably be the most likely reason.
And that dispersed the crowd?
Correct.
That's the defendant that just came walking towards you, right?
That is correct.
It looks like at this point the wind is blowing that gas towards you and the other folks that were around the corner there. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
Did you have a gas mask on?
I did not.
Did any of them, do you know?
Not that I saw.
Let's pause right here. Mr. Harris, do you see those armored vehicles in the street?
Sure do.
Now, if I'm reading the screen here correctly, your video file here has about 24 minutes left to play. Would that be accurate?
That would be accurate.
And have you watched this video recently?
Yes.
Does this video end around the time that Mr. Rosenbaum, or the defendant, shoots the people?
Yes, within a few minutes after that. Battery ran out.
So would it be fair to say that at this moment in the video, the shootings are going to be in roughly 20 minutes or thereabouts after this?
Roughly, yes.
I see that the Bearcats and whatnot are in the road at this point in front of the 59th Street car source. Do you know where they traveled after this?
They traveled more forward towards 60th Street, I believe, and then they stopped there.
Did they establish a line keeping the protesters south of 60th at that point?
With the MRAPs, or Bearcats, yes.
Okay. So is it fair to say, Mr. Harris, that for the remainder of your video, as far as you know, no protesters came back to 59th Street car source after this?
Not that I witnessed.
Two questions. First of all, do you independently remember at any point in the sequence of events that we've just seen, starting with that dumpster fire and all the way forward here, do you remember ever seeing Joseph Rosenbaum?
I do not.
After rewatching your video, is Mr. Rosenbaum in this video at any point during the series that we've just watched?
No, not that I can see.
I have nothing further.
Sorry. I was ready to go home. No, I'm just kidding.
I tried to start twice without the jury.
Yeah, it's Monday.
That's what I said.
Thanks for making me laugh.
No, it's all right. First time.
Mr. Harris, on the video, you describe people as militia, right?
Correct.
You point up at the roof and say, "There's militia members up there," right?
That is correct.
That's your opinion. You didn't talk to any of them about. I'll ask it to you this way. You had no information